Hi, I'm Mira. Welcome to another story. Let's see where this one takes us. The underwater city of Erelis was crumbling. Its once brilliant bioluminescent spires dimming as cracks spread like spiderwebs across its great domes. For decades, its people had relied on ingenuity and patchwork solutions to keep it afloat, but the city's power reserves were dwindling, and another dome breach seemed inevitable. Dr. Lira Calder had long since abandoned sleep in their pursuit of a solution. In their cluttered workshop beneath the main dome, they sat hunched over their workbench, surrounded by tools and half-finished devices. Lira's mind raced with calculations and possibilities, but their frustration grew with every passing moment. "I can stabilize the grid," they muttered, tweaking the wiring of a prototype. "If I can just..." A sudden spark flew from the circuit and the device fizzled out. Lira slammed their hand against the bench, the sound echoing in the quiet room. The door creaked open, and Kade Morlin stepped inside, water droplets trailing from their boots. The salvage diver's expression was grim as they tossed a small metal box onto the workbench. "Found this while I was clearing debris near the trench," Kade said, their voice flat. "Figured you'd want a look." Lira opened the box, their frustration momentarily forgotten. Inside was a smooth, oval-shaped artifact, its surface shimmering like liquid pearl. Intricate patterns swirled across it, their glowing faintly in the dim light. Lira's breath caught. "This isn't from the city." "Yeah, no kidding," Kade replied, leaning against the wall. "It was buried under a ton of junk, probably older than Erelis itself." Lira turned the artifact over in their hands, their mind already racing. "It's emitting energy," they murmured. "Strong enough to power the city if we can stabilize it." Kade's eyes narrowed. "Or strong enough to rip it apart." Lira shot them a look. "We're out of options, Kade. The grid won't last another year. If there's a chance this thing can help, we have to take it." "We?" Kade repeated, crossing their arms. "This thing isn't some broken generator you can fix with duct tape and hope. You don't know what it is or what it'll do." "I'll find out," Lira said firmly, already reaching for their tools. "This could be the answer we've been waiting for." Over the next several days, Lira worked tirelessly to decode the artifact's secrets. The patterns on its surface shifted constantly, forming intricate symbols that defied any known language. Kade hovered nearby, their skepticism growing with each pulse of energy that made the workshop walls tremble. "You're not seeing the signs," Kade said one evening, their voice sharp. "This thing isn't here to help us. It's dangerous." "Everything's dangerous," Lira snapped. "The city's falling apart, Kade. If you have a better solution, I'd love to hear it." Kade didn't answer, their jaw tightening. Instead, they pointed to a faint crack snaking up the workshop wall. That wasn't there before. Lira hesitated, their gaze flicking between the crack and the artifact. For a moment, doubt crept in, but they shoved it aside. "The grid stabilizer I'm building can regulate the output. I just need more time." Kade threw up their hands. "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you when this thing blows up the city." The breakthrough came late one night. Lira adjusted the artifact's frequency, and suddenly its patterns coalesced into a single glowing symbol. A hum filled the workshop, deeper and more resonant than before. Before Lira could react, a holographic interface projected from the artifact, displaying what looked like a map of the city. Kade burst through the door, their face pale. "What the hell is going on?" "It's a map," Lira said breathlessly. "It's showing me how to connect it to the grid." "And it's cracking the walls while it's at it," Kade retorted, pointing to another fracture spreading above them. "This thing's not saving the city, it's tearing it apart." Lira stared at the map, their heart pounding. The artifact's energy was unlike anything they'd ever seen, but its potential was undeniable. Yet the faint cracks in Kade's warnings gnawed at the edge of their thoughts. Then the artifact pulsed again, and the workshop was filled with a vision. The city appeared before them, its domes gleaming and pathways bright, but the vision shifted, cracks spread across the structures, and the city crumbled into darkness. At the center of the destruction was the artifact, glowing faintly as shadowy figures emerged from the rubble. The vision faded, leaving Lira and Kade in stunned silence. The artifact pulsed once more, emitting a faint whisper. "Balance must be restored." "What does that mean?" Kade demanded, their voice low. What the hell does it want? Lira's gaze remained fixed on the artifact. I don't know, they admitted, their voice trembling. But I think it's asking us to choose. The artifact's hum deepened, reverberating through the workshop like the beating of a colossal heart. Lira stood frozen, the glowing symbol on the artifact etched into their mind. The whisper still lingered, soft but unrelenting. Balance must be restored. It's asking us to choose. Kade's voice broke the silence, sharp with disbelief. Choose what? Whether it kills us now or later? Lira's hands trembled as they reached for the projection, their fingers brushing the faintly glowing map of the city. The vision had been clear. The artifact held the potential to save Erelis from collapse, but the consequences of activating it were anything but certain. We have to understand it first, Lira said, their voice quieter now. The balance it's talking about, maybe it's something we can control. Maybe it's not a death sentence. Kade snorted, stepping closer to the artifact with wary eyes. You really think we're in control here? That thing is playing us, Lira. You saw the vision. It didn't exactly scream happily ever after. It also didn't say we were doomed, Lira countered, their frustration bubbling to the surface. Maybe it's a warning, yes, but it's also showing us a way forward. The artifact stabilized the city in the past. We just have to figure out how to do it again. Kade shook their head, their jaw tight. And what if it doesn't? What if we light this thing up and it decides the best way to restore balance is to wipe us all out? That's a risk we have to take, Lira snapped, turning to face Kade fully. Do you think the city can survive without this? Look around, Kade. The cracks are already forming. The power's flickering. We're not going to last another month, let alone a year. Kade's glare softened, but only slightly. And what if we make it worse? Do you think anyone's going to thank us for blowing up the last chance they had to survive? Lira opened their mouth to argue, but the words caught in their throat. Kade's point wasn't wrong. There was every chance the artifact could cause more harm than good. But the alternative was doing nothing, and that was a risk Lira couldn't accept. The artifact pulsed again, brighter this time, and the projection shifted. The map of the city zoomed in on the central power grid, the lines of energy flickering and dimming as if in real time. A second image appeared beside it, a glowing schematic of the artifact itself, its symbols pulsing in rhythm with the city's failing lights. It's connecting to the grid, Lira murmured, their eyes wide. It knows how to stabilize it, or how to shut it down entirely, Kade muttered, but their tone had lost its edge. They watched the projection with a mix of awe and dread, unable to deny the artifact's intricate understanding of the city. Lira turned to Kade, their voice steady but pleading. You've always said we needed a miracle to save Erelis. This is it. I know it's a gamble, but if we don't try, the city is finished. Kade held their gaze for a long moment, their expression unreadable. Finally, they sighed, running a hand through their damp hair. Fine, but if this thing starts doing anything we can't handle, I'm shutting it down. No arguments. Lira nodded, their relief palpable.
No arguments!
The connection process was painstaking. Lira worked furiously to align the artifact's energy signature with the city's grid, sweat beading on their forehead as they calibrated the stabilizer they'd built. Kade kept a wary eye on the artifact, their blade at the ready, as if expecting it to lash out at any moment. As the final connection was made, the artifact emitted a piercing tone and the projection shifted once more. A new image appeared, a balance scale, one side glowing brightly while the other sat in darkness. Beneath it, the whisper returned, louder this time. To sustain life, one must give life. Kade's head snapped toward Lira. Tell me that doesn't mean what I think it does. Lyra's face paled, but they didn't look away from the projection. It needs a sacrifice, they said quietly. Something or someone to complete the connection. No, Kade said immediately, their voice hard. That's where we draw the line. If we don't, the city dies, Lira replied, their voice trembling but resolute. This is the cost, Kade. This is what it means to restore balance. Kade took a step closer, their eyes blazing. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Lira's voice cracked, their desperation, inspiration spilling out. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone in Erelis, the children, the families, everyone who depends on this city to survive. We can't let them down. Kade looked away, their jaw clenching. The room fell silent except for the artifact's rhythmic hum, the weight of the decision pressing down on both of them. Lira took a shaky breath, stepping toward the artifact. If a life is what it needs, then it'll be mine. What? Kade's voice was sharp, but there was a crack in it. They grabbed Lira's arm, forcing them to turn. You think this is some noble sacrifice? It's not. You're just running headfirst into the abyss because you can't stand the thought of failing. And you're running away from it because you're afraid to hope, Lira shot back, their voice firm. This isn't about me, Kade. It's about giving the city a future. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, reluctantly, Kade let go, their hand falling to their side. If you're doing this, you'd better be right. Lira nodded, their resolve hardening as they placed their hands on the artifact. The glow intensified, engulfing the room in light, and as the energy surged, Lira whispered, "For Erelis." The artifact pulsed one final time, its hum fading into silence. When the light dimmed, Kade stood alone in the workshop, their heart heavy as the city's lights glowed brighter than they had in years. The lights of Erelis shone like never before, their brilliance piercing the gloom of the underwater abyss. The artifact's final pulse had rippled outward, its glow fading as it absorbed Lira's sacrifice. Kade stood in the quiet of the workshop, their breath heavy and uneven. The artifact sat motionless on the bench, its once pulsing patterns now dormant, its whispers silenced. The faint sound of water dripping from the cracked walls was the only noise for what felt like an eternity. Kade's blade clattered to the floor, forgotten, as they slumped into a chair. Their chest felt heavy, the weight of what had just happened, pressing down like the ocean above them. They ran a hand over their face, staring at the artifact. "You better have been worth it," they muttered, their voice hoarse. Hours passed before Kade forced themselves to leave the workshop. The city outside was almost unrecognisable. The bioluminescent pathways pulsed with steady light, and the cracks in the domes had sealed themselves with a faint, shimmering layer of energy. People wandered the streets in awe, their faces lit with a hope Kade hadn't seen in years. Kade kept their hood low as they walked through the crowds. The murmurs of the citizens reached their ears, rumours of a miracle, whispers of salvation. No one knew what had happened, but they felt the difference in the air. The city was alive again. Despite the renewed energy, Kade couldn't shake the hollow feeling in their chest. Every glowing light, every repaired crack felt like a monument to Lira's absence. Back in the workshop, Kade sat alone, staring at the dormant artifact. For days they had tried to move on, burying themselves in work, patching breaches, clearing debris, anything to keep their mind busy. But the artifact remained a silent reminder of what had been lost. It wasn't until a week later that something changed. The artifact flickered, its surface lighting up with a faint, wavering glow. Kade froze, their heart pounding. The hum returned, softer this time, almost like a heartbeat. "What now?" Kade muttered, standing cautiously and reaching for their blade. The artifact's patterns shifted, coalescing into the same glowing symbol it had shown before. A projection sprang to life, but this time it wasn't a map, it was a figure, a hazy, glowing silhouette that slowly took form. Kade's breath caught as they recognised the outline. "Lira?" The projection wavered, but the figure's features grew clearer. It was Lira, or at least some version of them, their form faintly glowing and their expression calm. "Kade," the figure said, their voice soft but unmistakably Lira's. "You're still watching over the city." Kade's grip on the blade faltered. How are you?" "I'm not really here," Lira replied, their tone gentle. "The artifact preserved a fragment of me, enough to guide you if you'll let it." Kade stared at them, a mixture of anger and sorrow flashing in their eyes. "You didn't tell me this was part of the plan." "I didn't know," Lira admitted. "But the artifact isn't just a power source, it's part of something bigger, something the city was always meant to be, and now it's your turn to decide what that means." "What am I supposed to do?" Kade snapped. "You're the one who knew how all this worked." "You'll figure it out," Lira said, a faint smile touching their lips. "You always did." The projection wavered again, flickering as if it were running out of energy. Kade took a step forward, their voice trembling. "Wait, don't go." "I'm not gone," Lira said, their voice fading. Not really. Erelis is alive because of you, Kade. Keep it that way. The projection vanished and the artifact dimmed once more, its surface going still. Kade stood there, their hands trembling, as the weight of Lira's words sank in. Over the following weeks, Kade began to take on a new role in the city. They repaired what could still be salvaged, worked with the engineers to understand the artifact's energy, and slowly started to believe in the possibility of a future for Erelis. The citizens saw Kade as a protector, a symbol of the city's resilience, though Kade never sought the recognition. But every night, they returned to the workshop. The artifact remained dormant, and Lira's projection didn't reappear. Yet Kade kept their promise, watching over the city and ensuring that Lira's sacrifice wasn't in vain. One evening, as Kade stood on the edge of the dome, looking out into the endless blue expanse, they allowed themselves a small bittersweet smile. The lights of Erelis shimmered behind them, steady and bright. For the first time in years, the city wasn't just surviving, it was alive. Thanks for listening. If the story stuck with you, come back next time for another journey.